So Stephen King's fairy tale. I'm going to come right off the bat and say that this was a 5-star read for me. It's definitely one of the best. And I might be a little biased because I love Stephen King, but when I found out that this was a fantasy novel, like, I just had to have it. Actually, it was actually pretty funny how I came across it. I went to Walmart, of all places, and I saw it sitting on the shelf. And there was a worker that was behind me while I was picking the book out, and I picked it up, and I saw the price, and I was like, oh my god, this book is $20-something. It was like almost 30. And the guy was laughing at me. I can't remember what I said exactly, but I was like hitting it, and I was like, this is a thick book. I'm like, well, it's kind of paying for 2 books at once. And I don't know, the guy he thought it was so funny, but I had to have this book. There's so many angles to come at it from. Like, for instance, the language thing. I feel like some people won't like the language concept, that they have these made up words, but I thought it was such an interesting idea. Because it's a reminder that English is the only language that has this slang that keeps changing, while other languages call it the hardest language to learn, because we're the only ones that keep changing the rules. Everyone else has a set of rules, a couple of words they can substitute for other words, but we're the only ones who can just make the craziest words out of words that don't even exist. So every now and then you'll hear Charlie try to say something that doesn't exist in their language, and he has to find a substitute. And I think that's such an interesting concept to actually put in that detail. Like, we're starting right off the bat with something like that. And rather than really feeling or telling us what Charlie feels, he tends to stay neutral a lot of the time, letting us feel our own way about everything. He just explains to it as he sees it. If he acted out or whined or anything like that, he'd come off as one of those annoying characters that people don't like. But he doesn't do that. He kind of just takes up this stance of like, oh, I'm just a normal kid. And you never realize how much we don't know about people, because he seems like this normal kid, right? Who doesn't really do anything wrong. And he mentions some of the good stuff that he just stumbles across. But then sometimes he'll say like, oh, well, I've done some bad stuff. And it makes you wonder, like, what do we not know about our own protagonist? It's about growing up and realizing, that sports isn't the only important thing in life. And when you're in high school, some of the most trivial things seem like the end of the world if it doesn't work out right. But as you grow up, you start to learn there are so much more important things. When reading his book, it's just so easy to step into his writing. And I've been reading a lot of YA this year because I've been sucked in by the summaries. But they all end up kind of disappointing me or just lacking in something. It doesn't have the right mixture of character and fantasy in it. And it's insane that you get this out of a Stephen King novel, and he probably didn't even try. He doesn't need big fancy words like a lot of people use these days. I even remember a quote about him saying something that like, less is more when it comes to the scriptures, and he was right. Sometimes he gives off these really cringy like descriptions that they're almost too real. It takes you out of the immersion, but it's dead on, and you don't like to hear these kind of things. But a lot of the times, like, he's spot on. It's just obvious. So when you jump from YA to a real writer, the difference in quality is astounding. Like, he can sit there and write about somebody eating. He probably has, and I'd read it. Fully invested, because it always pays off. The attention that he pays to detail. Sometimes it does get dragged out a lot. Like, with every single character, there's kind of this annoying thing that like he'll tell you literally their whole backstory from before they were born up into where they are now in the story. And sometimes it's completely unnecessary, especially for an NPC, as I'd call it. But the story is great. I love the combination of horror and fantasy. It's literally like a fairy tale. And there are gruesome times, but again, I can't help but feel like my immersion gets broken when he always brings in these real world references. And there's a couple of times when like he literally says, I don't feel like writing this, so just pretend it happened. And he does that like twice. I don't know if that's just being lazy or a writing choice, but I just thought it was kind of funny. Oh, and by the way, if he killed the dog, I was going to rage quit this book so hard. Like, you don't even know right now. There's no way I'm thinking. I'm like, can even he do that? Can he do something like that? Can he kill a dog? Apparently not. We have found your weakness, King. I'm only joking. Please don't kill any dogs in the next story. So I really enjoyed it, especially the first half of the book. where we get to explore this new world filled with all these new mystical, fantastical elements. And there's a mystery trying to unveil a backstory here. And it's slowly fed to you a piece at a time, literally like the crumbs. And you have to know more. I'm kind of in the same boat as the others on the second half. And I had an idea that I wish the ending, I don't want to say I wish, but like I had an idea of a different ending, which is a major spoiler, by the way. But let's say, so like we know he gets put in jail for a long time in the second half. So let's say like he escapes the jail and then ended up putting himself on the sundial. Wouldn't that be insane? I don't know. It's just they led up to the sundial being a major part of the story, and it only was for a little bit, but it didn't have any dire consequences apart from landing him directly in jail. So it would make the sundial a little bit more useful and also explain the backstory behind it, and just more dramatic than how it really ended. A lot of this was about the royal family's drama, and I wasn't completely invested in that, especially with how the princess was being angsty all the time, because she didn't used to be like that. But then all of a sudden she was like that. And it was like, okay, I don't want to talk to you anymore. So after a while, the second half starts feeling more like an apocalyptic world than an actual fantasy world that it started out on. But I loved like moving through the world and seeing all the different monsters, the things, the places, the styles, the differences from its world and our world. I don't know if I'd be able to do what Charlie did in the end and just cover it up. Like, it would be so hard to leave for me. And the ending seemed kind of rushed is all I can say about it. Like, he straight up tells and shows his dad, who I've been thinking of like the whole time, how would we explain this to our dad when we get back? Would he get mad? Would he want to see? How would he react? But in the end, he's just like, oh, that's cool. But I do understand Charlie has this fleeting feeling of not wanting to share something that's personally just supposed to be his. I could understand that. So it's crazy in life how something can happen just one day and then they're gone. It really hits close to home with what happened to Charlie when he was a kid, and I think someone only like Stephen King can do something like that. After his mother's death, he lives with his struggling father, who's not even a bad person at all. It seems like he sort of lost the light, and Charlie's a grown kid who needs support. The portal. What I don't understand is that there's a portal that can go to another world and extend your life. It's like this drug almost. Like they each of them have to keep going back. Why would you not just stay there? Sort of like Alice in Wonderland. Or, that guy in Constantine who gets so obsessed with the feeling of being hooked into the internet that he ends up staying. Like, I don't know if I would have the strength to come back after seeing something like that. But I guess it's similar to going on a trip. When you first get there, you're amazed and you're dazed. And then after like 3 or 4 days, you start feeling like, okay, it's time to go home. The book made me feel a lot of emotions, mostly because there's a dog involved. Like, I already have a weakness for old people. Even when they come in my store, I almost just start crying because they're just old. And now you put a dog in the story too, an old dog. I felt like so badly that something bad was going to happen to poor Radar. And it's so relatable, like watching how Charlie just gets into this bond with Radar that he just constantly comes up with excuses to see it. Like me, I'm not comfortable unless my dog is with me every chance I get. I worry about him when he's alone. I'll leave my door open just a crack, even though it annoys the hell out of me, because I can't bear the thought of him being separated and him wanting to come in and be close to me. There's a few other detail mentions here I want to talk about. When it was first revealed that a giant roach came out of the portal, but we didn't know there was more to it than that. We just saw a roach come out. I thought, oh, well, that's it. That's the secret that's been hiding in here this whole time. It kind of reminded me of Revival, where we already did the giant bug thing. But then I find out that that's just the surface, and everything underneath the surface turns out to be giant down there. It also is clearly interesting to me how there's 2 moons in that world. And there's a part where Charlie starts wondering what everybody would do if they found out about this place. The government would get involved. They would do its thing. The FBI would show up. And it would be like every alien movie ever. Because we just can't help ourselves. But we just can't help ourselves. We can't just go talk to it. We have to shoot it right on sight. And it would suck not being able to share this secret. I would probably tell somebody. I love gossip, and it's just so hard to ignore. And I do like at some point Charlie he becomes this character. I don't know how to explain it, but like he even straight up says like, "Oh, I'm not some guy out of your YA novels." He says like, "Oh, you think I'm some good guy in one of your YA novels? I'm not like that." And I don't know why, I just really love that statement. Like I feel like it takes a dig at all these YA novels that are becoming so popular lately. And honestly, I feel like killing that guy would have realistically been the only way to solve that problem. But I'm not gonna get into that. I miss the old woman who collects shoes. There's a lot of references to like Star Wars, H.P. Lovecraft, Disney, Three Little Pigs, all the fairy tales in general. You know, The Little Mermaid, The Princess Bride. Those, like, there's each these little references in there that just have fun at the fact that he's supposed to be writing about fairy tales. And I don't know why. It's just a really amazing book, and I really enjoyed reading it. But you probably already know the basic premise. Boy meets old man. Old man has an old dog. They have a secret portal that goes to another world. He goes in, gets mixed up in trying to save this world, and becomes the prince of it, and gets caught up in all these fairy tales. And it's more like the classic fairy tale, like the Grimm brothers kind of stuff. And I like that he also alludes to the fact that the fairy tales are based off of something like that, and not the ones we've come to know. He found the perfect mix of his style and fantasy. I don't know what else to say about it. It was just 5 stars for me, okay? I mean, it's as simple as it gets. It was a huge book, too, like 600 pages. And I flew through it. I just wanted to read it constantly, all the time. I actually put off doing this review for a long time because I felt like even with all the notes I took, nothing could do it justice for the way I felt. And I still don't think I did. But I still had to get it out there that I love this book. Especially after I didn't enjoy, Joyland, and I didn't enjoy The Outsider. So this came as a surprise. I had no idea this was coming out. But as soon as I saw it, I'm like, I had to have it. So that's it. I just had to rave about this novel. And it's going on my shelf with all the rest of my Stephen King books. So I'll see you for the next one, I hope.